Yeah, all right, let's do this. Okay, public sector, really exciting, right? Woo! Okay. Don't worry, I felt the same way when I first got into this space as well. Having said that, it is really meaningful work. It brings a lot of purpose into my life, and I hope to be able to share some of that with you. So to start off, I'm Chenny. If you ever need to take my Starbucks order, it's Chinese Jenny. And I am a serial experimenter. And I use the word experimenter because I don't like the word designer, mostly because I don't know if that actually describes what I do. And frankly, I would like for you to also reflect on, does it even describe what you do? Additionally, I have a Doge. Does anyone know what a Doge is? Yes. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what a Doge is, it's an internet meme. She basically has to feature on all of my presentations ever, so my Doge. So I wanted to also share a little bit more about my personal life, and it kind of looks a little bit like this. So I grew up in East Vancouver, and my family was victim to a series of unfortunate public services. One of those services being that when we arrived to Canada, we were placed in an extremely low-income neighborhood, of which here is a Chinese family that did not know any English, and the only thing we could afford at the time was a basement suite with 2 other families. Some stuff happened, and one day the police actually knocked on our door. And my mom couldn't actually speak in English fluently at the time. So failure number 2 of public service was that I actually ended up in the foster system. Failure number 3 of the public service was that when I went to university, I actually couldn't get a student loan. And this one's a weird one too, because if you think, well, technically a student loan should be made for people who need it the most. But it doesn't work like that. So all to say that this really was the reason why I became a designer. So my first hat was the UX hat. And the reason why I chose UX was because someone told me that it was about bettering human experiences, and I was like, yes, sign me up for that. I want to do that. So one of the first few projects I worked on was actually for the BC Ministry of Agriculture. And they presented us with a really interesting question. We asked, how might we make farming a desirable career for youth? In other words, the question was, how can we bring sexy back to farming? Because we are losing all of our BC farmers, and this is like a really big problem for the province. And so, I'm assuming all of you know what this is? Yes? Yes, awesome. So our pilot project with the BC Ministry of Agriculture was exactly this. Let's go out into the field, actually talk with family farmers, let's actually talk to youth, let's define what the real problem actually is, let's ideate with them, let's build some prototypes, let's test again, revise them, and then boom, you have a pilot. And now we can go and scale this thing. So here, government, I've made you something awesome that is actually validated. Let's scale it. And as we know, that repetitive nature happens here, except it didn't happen. And it doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen because, turns out, I was blindsided by the fact that often organizations don't have the capabilities to continue the work that we do, which often means that it sits on a shelf and then eventually retires, or budgets get removed and allocated somewhere else. So I got really frustrated, and I decided to toss the UX hat, and I decided to put on a business designer hat. So the business designer hat is basically the exact same methodology, except in the lens of how might we design for the business so that they're able to do what we do as UX designers. And this is where I actually originally got the idea with Jess to found Journey. Except, I don't know if you've noticed, but we're wearing glasses. And this is also really important because here's two 20-something female Asian eager beavers and going up to these executives and being like, hey guys, we actually know how you can better deliver work, so you should totally listen to us. And so that's where the glasses came from, because I was told I look wiser with glasses. They do actually work, by the way. So, side note, if you want to buy glasses for an interview. So we experimented with 3 models in general. And the first model was kind of similar to the BC Ministry of Agriculture project that I mentioned, which was, hey, we are an external team, and we will do it for you. Pros, super easy to do. Why? We can do it. Cons, the work doesn't live on 99% of the time. Model number 2 is, hey, we can help your internal innovation lab. Pros, we actually are able to get even further ahead because we're collaborating with people who speak the same language. Cons, they are a silo in themselves. And this was a really tough one for me to get over because at first I was really excited about it, except one of the SVPs of one of the innovation labs came up to me and said, no, Chenny, you don't understand. We have to protect our innovation from the rest of the company. Thank you for laughing. I was also like, WTF just happened? And so 2 reasons. One, employees actually felt they were disconnected from this lab. They were like, they get to do the cool job. Like, what? Why don't we get to do the cool job? And then the lab people are like, how come you guys don't know about us? Why won't you be more open and engaged to the work that we're doing? So it was a mess. So option number 3 actually works, and it's we should all innovate, which means it is the role of the organization to innovate, not an external team, not a lab, but the org. So pro is that it works. Con is that it takes a really, really, really long time. And which is fine for the private sector, but for the public sector, that doesn't quite work. As you know, people get reelected every 4 years, which means we have 3 years to create true change. And 3 years to create true change in a place where the seeds and roots of innovation and design are not well established is basically mission impossible. So I am now standing here thinking to myself at the time, okay, so that didn't work either. And then an interesting organization called the Local Health Integrated Network of Ontario approached us and asked us another interesting question, which was, how might we create the 9/11 equivalent platform for non-emergencies? By that I mean, if you're in an emergency situation, you know to call 911. But what if it's not an emergency? What do you do then? And when they first told me about the project, this was one of the key assets that they held near and dear to their heart. That was actually empowering people to deal with non-emergency situations. So I was like, oh my goodness, what kind of project have I agreed to? And so I threw out the hat because I'm like, screw the hat doesn't work. I am done with the hat. And we're just gonna figure it out. Like, okay, what is realistic? What can actually realistically be done right now? And I thought, well, what if we just pretended? Like the whole fake it till you make it thing that we talked about? So my question was, can an organization fake it till they make it? It's like, okay, how are we going to do that? And I came across a model called partnerships. And the awesome thing about partnerships is that everyone can continue to do what they are awesome at. That's it. Everyone continues to do what they're awesome at. You're not asking them to actually change the way that they work at all. So we got some partners together. And we said, hey, Lynn, you guys have lots of money. Please continue to do your job and have lots of money to fund this. And we went to Acclaim Health and said, you guys are super good at public engagement. Like, you're really connected to the organizations in our community. So please continue to be good at that. And we actually went to a startup called I Am Sick, which is actually at the Mars Center of Innovation. And we said, oh, they have the digital infrastructure to support this platform. Great. Let's pretend we are all one company for a minute. And we made this. And the awesome thing is that this took about a year, which is totally historically unheard of within this organization. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what our solution does. So raise your hand if you've ever needed a family doctor. Keep your hand up if you've been rejected by a family doctor because they aren't taking new patients. Raise your hand if you've ever been sick on Sunday night and wondered, where the hell do I go that's actually open? And I really need to see someone that's not the ER because I don't want to wait 10 hours. Yeah. So we thought, we can solve that problem. The good news is, you can actually go to the site. MyHealth365, shameless plug. And you can actually go and find a family doctor in your local area that's actually accepting a new patient. And you can look at whatever is open right now, whether that's midnight on a Sunday or 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. And so I wanted to share a little video that we had from one of our user testing sessions. And the reason why this video was extremely powerful is because now I'm currently using it as a tool to promote more of this type of working, this partnership, this acting our way into doing type of model in Gov. I'm hoping it works. Fingers crossed. Yes, it works. Do you have audio? Oh no. Okay, that's fine. I can talk you through it. So basically, here was a woman, and she said, you know what? I actually suffer from mental health, and I have been rejected by mental health practitioners my entire life. They don't want to take me as a new patient because they are not incentivized to do so, as she found out. And so she said, well, wherever I go, doesn't matter who I go to, they keep saying, oh, get on this wait list, go to this referral, go to that referral. And she's like, why am I not just empowered to find this information myself? And so as she was testing out our website, she actually found a mental health practitioner in her neighborhood who was actually accepting a new patient. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, guys, this is working, yay! So upon reflection, I was like, all right. So I threw away the hat, and now I've kind of lost my sense of identity. So I don't really know who I am anymore. And I still don't know who I am anymore, which is an awesome reminder to all of you. In fact, now when people ask me, so Chenny, what do you do? It ends up being like a ridiculous 15-minute conversation, of which at the end, we're still both confused as to what I still do. But that's fine. Going with a serial experimenter. And so the thing I want to leave you with is that right now, the problems in our world are just too big. Like, they are just way too big. And they're actually way too big for one organization to solve alone, which is why we actually need to band together, figure out ways of working together, continue to do what we all do best to solve those problems. And we need to solve those problems with design as our mindset. Because what I learned throughout my journey was that design was the connective tissue that held it all together. And that's our role today, at least how I see our role. So when you leave our lovely space, crafted by Chase and Marcus today, I would like you to think of, you know what? I am not just a designer. I don't just make interfaces and experiences and visual and digital. I actually connect the organizations and the communities and the stakeholders and all of that good stuff that needs to happen because no one else is empathizing with them, no one else is taking the time to understand them, no one else is testing or ideating around it. It's just the designer. And that is such a cool job. But tomorrow, we might be needed elsewhere. Today, we might be connecting, and that might be the best fit for our role now. But using our designer mindset, that might put us in a different role. I don't know what that might look like. I don't think any of us does. But I think that that openness to what our role could be is truly what makes a designer a designer. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chenny. Are there any questions for Chenny at all? Both in terms of her journey, her hats, I love the hats, or even just kind of how this could apply to some of the work that you're doing.
Through a lot of hat processes, and as a current about to graduate student, when you're trying to apply for jobs, I find a lot of places try and categorize you, put you in a category as to you're a visual designer, you're an interaction designer, you're a product designer. How do you keep your avenues open without putting a title on yourself?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And a hard one to answer, but the way that I've tackled that today is by aligning myself under someone that I can really get behind. So instead of saying, hey, what is the job position ID that I need to fulfill, think about it more as, who do I want to follow? Whose team do I want to work in? And at that point, it doesn't really matter what your title is or anything like that, because then you're just empowered to do what you want to do. And I'll give you an example. So currently, I am working on a job contract with Halton Healthcare, and they were like, hey, we can't actually employ a firm for all of the work, so we kind of need you to be an internal member for 2 months, which meant that I had to stab my arm with 18 different vaccines. As Jess will attest to you later, was a very painful process. And my title was actually project coordinator, even though I did zero project coordination. I was just doing field research. But that was the only label they had available that was kind of relevant to what we were talking about. And I think you'll find that too, especially if you want to delve outside of areas that even recognize design, like the public sector, is that you'll find that they don't even know what to call us. And that's fine. But there will be people, and there'll be strong leaders who do want it. They don't know what it is that they want, but they want it. And if you can get them to believe in you, they will find a title for you that kind of makes sense for everyone else. I hope that sufficiently answers your question.
Are there any other questions for Chenny?
Hi.
Thanks very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
I work for one of those LINs.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm privileged to work for them, but one of the issues that I find, and it hasn't come up much today, but the reality out there in a big industry, I find is people don't know what their defined role is. And I know you want to take the wraps off this and everybody be creative. But if you use an analogy, it's like someone playing in baseball, first base, second base, and they really don't know the second baseman. So they run around the infield trying to catch the ball wherever it's hit, and they bounce into each other.
Yeah.
And the pitcher's using signals that are different from what the catcher's using. So the outside curve really ends up as an inside slider, and that's what I see in dealing with the health industry and all these corporations that are set up under their own separate law, their own separate board, their own separate CEO, that LINs are trying to come in now and change that culture in a huge industry. And in working within one of these local health integration networks, these crown corporations that are now going to be 10 times the size of they are, in 2 months they're going to be 10 times that size, there's a lot at stake here. And this ability to play as a team member and to know your role doesn't seem to come out, like the design I think is in everything. I totally get what has been talked about today. But then for me to walk in Monday and apply that.
For sure.
And all the other people think they're applying the same stuff. This is a confusing question, but it is a real dilemma. And it comes out when the Auditor General does reviews of the LINs, and Dr. Sinha does review of the LINs, and you've got all these reviews, is this role playing and this accountability.
Yeah, for sure. And so first of all, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I also want to thank you for being a part of the ongoing battle to bring a human-centered focus into Gov. it's not easy, and it does take a really long time. And that's what I mean by acting. Because when I say acting, I mean, like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't truly feel in my heart that we've been able to convert the organization to even an inkling of a design-focused mindset at all, like not even an inkling. But at least we're able to spread some seeds within a short period of time. And I think that, like all good seeds, they will need different roles to help them grow. So we'll need someone to water them, we'll need sunshine, we'll need someone to prune them, and all of this stuff. And so although right now our job, at least the way I see it, is at least plant the seeds, which is connect people, connect organizations, connect the silos together, I don't truly know what bringing sunlight and water will mean yet. I don't really know what pruning will mean yet. But I think if we at least take it step by step and continue to come to gatherings like this to share our learnings, that it may become a means to eventually find a better solution. Does that answer your question?
Well, it would be, partially does, but all the power in this room and all these young graduates, they're talking different language from what I'm working with every day, with so-called designers, planners, or performers, or integrators. And so that's where, geez, you'd like to see some of these, more of these people like yourself out working with us.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid they're all talking corporate this, and they're all talking Frankfurt
Yeah.
and Sao Paulo, et cetera. And we got a big industry just next door to us here.
For sure.
It's almost in the last century and not carrying this forward,
Yeah.
you know, this economic development, community development. So that's where the dissonance I'm suffering.
Yeah.
In this session today.
And it's tough because even when I find I enter those environments, I'm like, I'm the only one. All right, let's make some friends. And I think often young people have a hard time, even myself, to find a role within the LIN or any other government organization. For example, right now we're also working on a project with Immigration Canada that's also facing the exact same challenge. And I find that the reason is because it's up to the designer to find a way to kind of get in instead of there being a clear path. Unlike other roles, it's like, okay, here's the description, the word design is actually in the title, or research, or something, whereas often in Gov, that's lacking. And so it takes someone with who for myself, it was like, I need to contribute to the system because I lived the shittiness of systems failing. But we can't just depend on those types of environments to call people to public work. And I think if anyone here has suggestions in terms of how we may be able to bring public work more to the attention of students, I would totally love to have an offline conversation with you guys and Karen, and even yourself, about how we may be able to foster this type of stuff. I mean, one of the potential simple ones is how can we bring design internships into Gov even, right? So I think there's lots of small wins potentially too. Yes?
How were you able to facilitate the partnerships you just illustrated there between what was obviously a private
Yes.
organization and two public organizations? Was that organic, or did they already have an existing relationship?
So as a designer, obviously we don't have magic wands, but what we can do is connect people to each other. And what it really took was still strong champions within all of those organizations who put their hand up. But it was the designer's job to be able to kind of take the time with each champion and be able to understand all of their different needs, and all of their different incentives and all of their different org structures to try to come up with some type of work plan that would be able to at least pass through their organization in some small way.
Just one quick other follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do you see this type of structure being viable in the private sector as
So this partner structure was actually inspired by one of my mentors. In case you want to Google him, his name's Walt McNee. He's the vice chair of MasterCard Worldwide. And he did a project with MasterCard and UNHCR where they were able to deploy cards to refugees as a means of identification, but also refilling those cards with funds. And for me, I was like, whoa, here are here's like an impossible situation that not one party could do, but because everyone was doing what they could do best, they were able to come up with a solution within a short period of time based on a humanitarian need. I mean, I think for Gov, it's kind of the same thing. We could take 20 years to change, but how many people are going to suffer in that time, and how can we accelerate that in some way? So that's where the inspiration comes from. Thanks for your question.
Are there any other questions for Chenny? Awesome. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.